Oh, uno, dos, tres, cuatro. The revolution will put you in the driver's seat. The revolution will not be televised.
Revolution.
The revolution will not be televised. Will not be televised. Not be televised. The revolution will be.
What's going on, everybody? You're listening to another episode of the Visual Revolutionary Podcast. My name's Rick Stovall, and that's the intro. As always, make sure to check out visualrevolutionary.com for all your information about the show, at Visual Revolutionary on Instagram. Subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. If you want to see some videos of the conversations, I do release short clips of the videos on YouTube at Visual Revolutionary there. All the at Visual Revolutionaries, check them all out. Hit subscribe though, especially on the YouTube one, because those numbers are embarrassing compared to what I know the numbers are on all the podcast platforms. So help me out a little bit, because it makes me look bad, you know? I try not to care, but when I see like a video with like 50 views on it, just open it so I get a view from you. Listen to it wherever you listen to podcasts, and then just go to YouTube and let it play for a second. Maybe it'll get my numbers up. I don't know. I'll shut up. Anyway, today on the show, Peter Andrew Lusztyk returns. I'm a fan of this guy's work and of him in general. Always enjoy talking to him. We have very open and honest dialogue. But sometimes I'm reminded of his work by someone else I would love to get on this show, but can't seem to make happen. Peter McKinnon, I'm talking to you. Let's make it happen already. Anyway, McKinnon's featured this guy multiple times on his YouTube channel. He did a recent video up at his cabin. Beautiful spot. It was a beautiful video. Good job, Peter McKinnon. You don't need me to tell you that you're good at what you do. But it was just a reminder like, oh yeah, I should have Peter back on the show because I love what he's doing. And he's doing some cool stuff in the woods now. You know, many of you know him for giant 4 foot by 6 foot collector pieces of a coin or a gummy bear or a Lego toy. And he's really found a lot of inspiration from nature out at his cabin. And he's got some really cool pieces of mushrooms that he's been doing lately. He's got another cool personal project with Michelle Rabin, who's a food stylist. Really cool images coming out of that. We talk all about both of them. So we catch up on things, talk about the cabin, talk about the new projects, talk about both of our attempts to balance what pays the bills with what we want to shoot, all of that and more. So I'll take you right to it. I think you'll enjoy this one. Here's my conversation with Peter Andrew Lusztyk.
Revolution.
Peter Andrew Lusztyk, welcome back.
Thank you so much for having me, man. It's always a pleasure to talk to you.
Yeah.
Your voice is so nice. I forgot how nice your voice is. It sounds like you're like made for this.
Thanks. What's new, man? So, I mean, it seems like you've been working on some cool projects.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, like I've always got something going on. Like right now, I'm really excited about this project that I have going on with my friend Michelle. She's a food stylist.
Yeah, it looks
does a
really
lot of
cool.
work. Yeah, she does a lot of work for. There's a magazine in Ontario, Canada, that's called Food and Drink Magazine. She does a ton of work, but she does a lot of work for that magazine, and it's a really good sort of like alcohol and food magazine that's sponsored by something we have in Ontario called the Liquor Control Board of Ontario. So if you want to go and buy booze or wine, you can't really just walk into like a Walmart or like a grocery store. You got to go to like the government agency and buy from them, which is kind of weird. But one kind of good part about it is that they have a very high level magazine that comes out like once every few months. It has beautiful recipes and really good writing, and the photography is very, very good. She shoots a lot with them, and she does a lot of other really cool stuff too. Anyway, her and I got together and we're like, let's try shooting something creatively. And we kind of came up with a story about, I don't know, like a lifestyle basically that's like a little bit rooted in kind of nostalgia. And we try to have no like references of modernity in any of the photographs. So everything that sort of appears in them is, you know, looks like it's 1970s or older. And we started shooting it up at my cabin. I got a log house with, some really cool sort of vignettes and areas that I play with for my photography. And we started shooting like a couple scenes there, and it sort of morphed into this idea. We're like, why don't we do a calendar where we do a separate image for each day of the month, or each month of the year, I should say. And then we've gotten way past that now, and we're just kind of like been working on all these different creative images together. We shot some stuff up there, sort of hunting related and some, we kind of back and forth on some really interesting ideas. Like she'll find some house that's sort of half abandoned or about to get torn down. She's like, look at the wallpaper though. And I'm like, that's perfect. We got to shoot. She's like an old cat lady and she's staring out the window, spying at her neighbor, and we'll create these like stories and we'll go shoot them. And it's been really fun. It's something completely just creative, no client attached to it. But what's amazing is that people have been buying these photographs and decorating with them, and we've sold a bunch to people all over the world. And we're having a show together coming up at the end of the month in Toronto here at a really nice gallery. And so that's one of the things that I've been really excited about.
Super cool.
We just finished shooting.
I've been following that one, and it's got a real vibe to it, man. So like, congrats on all the work. Cause you did a gallery show before, didn't you?
Yeah. We did a gallery show in a laundromat.
Yeah, that's what I was like, when I was looking at the images, I was like, where are they right now? She's sitting on some kind of appliance. It seems like you touched on a couple things I want to talk about anyway, including your cabin. But yeah, man, the way you approached it, and like you said, to have this real, kind of vintage aesthetic about it. And I think you said it right as far as not really being able to pin it towards any kind of modernity, like it's very timeless feeling. And it really, like, of course it appeals to her brand and what she's doing as well, but it's a very standalone looking project, like it could kind of exist in a lot of different facets. And yeah, it's been really cool watching you post those images. Every time you do one, I'm like, oh yeah, this one super cool. And like you said, it seems a little bit outside of the wheelhouse of even a lot of the commercial and food stuff you've done. It definitely has a really different vibe about it.
Thanks, man. And I will say this, like, it's almost good training for trying stuff that's a little bit weird and scary in my commercial work. Like, I've been shooting a lot for Kodiak. It's a construction boot company, and Terra. It's another construction boot company. And I've been like sort of playing with retouching those images. And I'm like, what if I just like make it a bit more yellow? Or like, what if I take away the contrast and make it less crunchy? And it's sort of like, I could feel it sort of bleeding into commercial work, stylistically. And I feel like that feels good. And the clients seem really happy with it too. So
yeah, it comes up on the show all the time. I think, a lot of times people get tired of getting pigeonholed creatively, so to speak, and you get known for a certain look or a certain aesthetic, and people hire you for that. And a lot of times I think creatives get in a rut that way, and they're trying to kind of figure the way out, and that's the way out. You're like, go make work that you're not getting paid for, and then see if that work bleeds into the work you do get paid for.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we talked about this last time, but I'll say it again. Like, so much of the work that I've done personally is the work that clients will reference when they're like, we wanted you for this project because of this thing you did. We love that outdoor stuff that you shot. And it's, sometimes it's, vacation photos or stuff that you shot as a test in your studio. And then that's the work that they're referencing. Like, very seldom I feel am I hired commercially for work that I shot commercially. It's usually I'm hired commercially because they like something that I've done in my personal work.
Totally. Yeah. Well, let's talk about, because it's funny. Just like last time, thanks to Peter McKinnon, I was reminded of you again. I mean, I follow you on Instagram and I see your posts, but like, I saw that video in a very McKinnon fashion. He made it, a real dramatic video of your cabin up there. I was like, oh, dude, yeah. I like all of this, the Alpa camera system. Good Lord. I know. Coming from an architectural photographer, I know all about that system. I think that's probably the people that they work with the most are real high-end architecture guys. But yeah, what a cool spot, first of all, because I know you're in Toronto, but like where is that cabin? Just outside or? Yeah,
it's like 3 hours, like door to door.
Yeah.
So it's northeast of here, kind of between Toronto, which is the big city here in Canada and Ontario, and Ottawa, which is the capital city where I grew up in.
Right.
And it's kind of halfway point. My parents are retired. I don't know, 2017 or 2016, we started looking around for a place to kind of meet up halfway. My brother at the time was living in Toronto too.
Mm-hmm.
So we found that spot. It's 90 acres on like sort of really rough kind of like Canadian Shield or like, like not really agricultural land, but it's like rocks and cliffs and timber. And it's exactly the stuff that I really love. And I'm super fortunate, especially during the pandemic, man. It was like just godsend that we got the place a couple years earlier, and all of a sudden everyone's just like itching to get out of the city. And I was so stoked that I got to spend a lot of time up there then. And yeah, it's got a barn, a bunch of different little outbuildings, and then it's kind of centered around this big old log house that this German couple built in the 70s. It's got, wood burning fireplace, and we've done some renos now. Like the kitchen looks a little more modern, but it's still like just, it's a great place to go and shoot photos, which is another thing I didn't realize. I never thought about it being this like catalyst for all this photography stuff, but it's really gets my creative energy going up there a lot of the time as well, which is amazing.
Yeah, when I saw it, and then what you've been up to, like you said, as far as incorporating that into your work, the personal project we were just talking about, I'm, obviously using that as a location sometimes, because I didn't realize you had it the last time we talked. I don't think it came up. I don't remember talking about it, but seeing what you're doing with the big giant mushroom pieces and everything on the white, but very cool, because it's like it found its way into your fine art world as well, but giving you a different feel. Like it's coming from that same point of view, but suddenly you've got kind of this new subject matter that feels way more natural than obviously like the coins and the toys and stuff. And I like it.
Thank you. Yeah, man. Like it's weird. Like I feel when I'm up there, time flies way more than when I'm in the city, which is sort of strange to say. But like up there, it's like you wake up, you have coffee, check your emails, and you walk around the forest for a bit, and like it's lunchtime. Then, you do a bit more stuff outdoors, a couple chores, and then it's dinner time, and then it's time to go to bed. And then a week just kind of flies by. It's crazy. It's a really different pace. And I thought it'd be the alternative. Like in the city, I feel like I can get a lot of stuff done in a day. And there's a sort of dynamic things happen throughout the day that totally change the course. But up there, there's like sort of a schedule, and it really, you can lose a week real quick up there, which I enjoy. But I didn't, it's interesting, like going up there and the way it plays with sort of time and what a day is, and how much stuff you can accomplish. But I really, really love it. And I think that, so much of what I'm inspired by is stuff that's old and stuff that exists in nature, and bringing this sort of like laboratory or photographic laboratory up there and taking these elements, out of the woods and capturing them that way. It's something that, that's an idea that purely developed from walking around in the woods and looking at the ground and looking up at the trees and stuff like that. And I want to continue that as much as possible. I haven't really had a chance to showcase that whole body of work yet. And I'm struggling to figure out how, but it's regardless, like it's something I'm going to continue. And, and talking about it now too, like, I can't wait to go back up there.
Yeah.
It's addictive. Like, I'm like, fuck, what do I have to do before I can go back up there? And then it's nice. You go up there and you do a few days, and you sort of start to miss like Chinese food and sushi and grocery stores and all that. And then you come to the city. That's right.
Yeah. Yeah, it's cool to have, I've talked about it a lot on this show. Like my heart has definitely always been in the mountains. I love small towns. I love small town vibes. I like funky dynamics of little communities. But I also love the city. And like when I shoot in New York and stuff, the creative energy there is undeniable. But at the same time, like right now, as we're entering into winter and stuff and the days are getting really short, I love like going and walking my dogs when the stars are out, and that ability to see them, is like, you just don't get that when you're in the city, like these big starry nights and true silence. There's definitely a lot of creative energy in that too. And sometimes I think it's easy to say like, yeah, of course there's creative energy in the city. It's the hustle and the bustle and everybody's trying to get stuff done. And there's all kinds of artists, but there's something to just solitude and silence and darkness, that all comes with its own form of creative energy, I think, as well.
I think so too. It's funny. The shittier the weather is, the more depressing the weather is, the more I want to be up there. And
Yeah.
And it's kind of counterintuitive because I spent more time out in nature there, obviously, than I do here in the city.
Right.
But like on a beautiful sunny day when it's hot in the middle of July, like I want to be walking around getting ice cream, or there's a big park on an island here in Toronto with a bunch of beaches on it, riding my bike. Like that's when I want it. When it's a gray November day and it's like about to snow, like that's when I want to be up there with the fire going and walking around and looking for footprints in the snow and stuff like that. Like that's what, I don't know. It's weird. Or like just taking a bath with the window open up there. It's amazing. But when it's hot and the weather's nice, I want to be in the city. I don't know. I don't, it's another thing that I guess I didn't anticipate feeling when we got that place way back, 5-6 years ago or whatever it was. So, but yeah, I'm happy that I have it. I feel blessed. There's always projects up there. Like right now, there's a big stand of hardwood forest. It's sugar maple trees in the back acres, and I'm building a cabin back there that's kind of going to double as like a maple syrup production facility. So
cool.
You can hike back there or snowshoe back there, and there's like a wood burning stove, and you can cook on it. And then a couple times a year, we collect sap rather, and then you could boil it down into maple syrup. And, it's just something that I got going on in the background, working on this project, building a cabin like that. And it's a real creative outlet for me too, because outside of photography, and I know you probably feel the same way shooting architecture, but I feel like I, in another life, probably could have done like interior design or some sort of worked in product design or something like that. So it's nice to sort of design a space and especially out in nature where it's situated in such a beautiful place. So, I'm again, like through photography, I'm like, I can't wait to photograph this place. I can't wait to show it off, visually. And,
I can't wait to see more of it, because what I've seen already, like I said, those mushroom prints are cool. And like the frog in it and stuff, man, it's so cool. Really beautiful.
Thanks.
And I just like seeing, I mean, obviously maybe you've been working on it for a while, but like it took you a while. If you've had that property that long, like it took you a while to like really kind of introduce that into the lexicon of what you look like visually, because to me, like the mushroom images, they go together really well with what's her name? The food stylist?
Michelle
Rabin. Yeah. So what you're doing with Michelle and then like the mushroom stuff, like you could show that in the same space and it would all, I think, like it cohesively make a lot of sense.
Thank you. I would love to show that work. And I mean, the challenge is, like, I think I want to make it big. And if you want to show it big, then it's expensive to frame and you have to kind of collaborate with the gallery that's okay with dedicating that much wall space to it. I've been talking a little bit with Alpa about maybe doing something in Europe. And funny enough, the first person who's purchased one of those prints is Michelle. She bought a 60 by 60 inch mushroom print for her house, which is really nice. And I'm sure it's going to look great when we photograph it in there. It's funny, like going back to the video with Peter McKinnon, who, shot the spot up at my cabin. It was kind of funny. Like, I agree. It looks like so dramatic and it looks like, like the intro to like a, big budget documentary or something like that. But
right.
when we shot it together, like his knowledge of filming and his editing or his team, like it's crazy. Like we filmed for like maybe 45 minutes total.
That's wild.
And then a couple weeks later, he's like, yo, check this out, and sends me a link. And I'm like, I can't believe it. It looks like if that video was shot by like a Hollywood director, like I'd be like, yeah, like it's so good. Like, and I'm super lucky that he was inspired enough by that spot to do something like that, and
it goes to show his talent level, because that's crazy if he shot all that quick, because it had a very dramatic, cool vibe. Let's talk about, like, you mentioned the Alpa camera. Let's talk about that, like how you get your hands on it. That is a insanely expensive system that very few people get to shoot with. What you were shooting with, I don't even know. Does it even exist yet? Like I don't know. Like,
I think that they have created this incredible tool. And I think part of what they're struggling with is like, all right, how do we like get this out there? How do we get people excited about it? Because it's so expensive, it's so specific, and what do we do? And I don't know for sure, but I think that their marketing team Googled focus stacking or Googled macro photography
you,
and found me.
Amazing.
Like I think it's literally that simple. And she's amazing. Her name's Daniela, and she's, I think, the head of marketing at Alpa. And she reached out to me and she's like, listen, we got this new kit. We love what you're doing. Is there anything we could do to make this like happen? And I work with a shop in Toronto called B3K. They're like the big pro shop that sells phase systems and everything like that. And I talked to them and they're like, we'll take care of all the importation and all that, just promote us and we'll deal with Alpa and make sure that this can all happen. And this, this box showed up that was like the size of like a deep freezer from Switzerland in like late August or something. And they were like, here it is. And then myself and the guy Kyle at B3K had to sort of figure out how to use it all. And, as soon as the images started going back to Switzerland and I was showing them what I was doing, that she was just wrote me, she's like, I'm so glad we found each other. And that's basically it. And so I've got this crazy tool, it's gone from shooting macro stuff on a white background, with my Canon system. And like, all of a sudden I've been like handed this like tool from out of space, basically. Here you go. And it's like the best of the best. And I think that it's like part of the pressure now is like, there's no excuse. Like there's no, oh, but it could be higher res, or, oh, but it could be a little sharper. It's like, now this is the best you can possibly get. Yeah. And it's sort of up to me now to be like, okay, well, what's the next stuff I want to shoot? And they've been great. It's a small company out of Switzerland. It's like the equipment is beautiful. They've been great to deal with. And I think that like the cherry on top of the cake, so to speak, was that, they got Peter McKinnon doing a video about their gear, and he's got an audience of like 5 million people or something. So I think it's like a perfect storm,
right.
Like I love the gear. They need it to be out in the world. And, I've got a bit of an audience. Peter's got a huge audience. And like, so that's kind of how it's come together. And one of the fun things that I'm doing for them, because they're like, yeah, we need some merch. We see that you guys are doing all this merch stuff. We need some merch. And I'm like, I'll design you a cool Alpa sweatshirt.
Sweet.
And they're like, that's great.
Yeah.
So I'm just waiting to get those back, but I think they're going to be pretty sweet.
They can be like, listen, if you spend $100,000 on this camera, we will give you a sweatshirt.
Here's the thing. Like, I think the camera must be I don't know for sure, but a bit of like a lost leader for them. Like,
yeah.
How do you sell $100,000 system? Like, how many people are out there fishing for a camera like that? Like, I think the people that need them are probably like university institutes where they're, I don't know, documenting like ancient arrowheads that they're finding in the prairies or something. Zoological institutes where they're photographing insects, maybe like evidence rooms, but the equipment itself too is so technical that you almost need a technician to learn
how to do it
system specifically. Yeah. So, I mean, I hope they sell 1 million of them because of me, but I honestly had to kind of like control their expectations in a polite way, because like it's a system that I love, but it's just, you have to really know what you're doing to use it properly,
Oh yeah.
Even assembling and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they're gorgeous too. I mean, what a just absolute beautiful system.
Uh-huh.
And once again, like, because of what I do, like I've shot a lot of movement cameras. Yeah. I mean, we talked about that the last time you were on. I shot owned phases, I've been all over the place. Because architecture is demanding when it comes to detail sometimes. That's changed a bit, I think, in the way you are starting to see it represented more, which is pretty natural and pretty sometimes even kind of soft, honestly. Sometimes like shallower depth of fields and stuff that it used to be like so tag sharp, But nonetheless, what a amazing system. When it comes to even in Peter's video, when he talked about like Swiss design and the watch world, I know he's a big watch guy, but it's true. When you look at like what they did, you're just like, oh my God, what a masterpiece of design here.
I've only been there once to Switzerland. It was last year, unrelated to Alpa stuff, but I was skiing in southern Germany, and the closest airport was in Zurich. So I flew in there and spent a couple nights in there. It's an incredible place, man. Like you could walk into like a 7-Eleven equivalent and like get a sandwich, and it's like it looks like it was made by like a French pastry chef. You know what I mean? Like everything there is really good. They really care about quality. There's like an honor to everything that is being marketed or put out for sale, and it's refreshing because I feel like, you know, our culture here in North America is pretty throwaway.
Mm-hmm.
Stuff's not really built to last, and you know, it's sort of there's planned obsolescence in every consumer good that you seem to get. And I mean, I'm guilty of it too. Like if I'm looking to buy a toaster and I just need something fast, like, you know, you go to Walmart or whatever, and you can get something for $20, but that's not the culture there. It's like everything is forever, and it's really refreshing to see. And I hope I get to spend more time there. Yeah, because it's inspiring, man.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, the level of craftsmanship and attention to detail when you look at so many Swiss made items, you know, it's really impressive. I like what you were talking about, you know, when you were talking about Alpa and this idea of like, well, there's no excuse now, you know, like I wish there was more detail. I wish there was this, you know, like you really can't shoot it any better than what that camera's doing.
Yeah.
So, I mean, for me, that was what was cool to see some of the mushroom stuff and everything, is because you get a little more depth in those images, you know, compared to, I mean, look, what you've done with like the coins and the gummy bears and everything, that's amazing because you take, especially with a coin or something, you take what could look like a very two-dimensional object and create a lot of depth and dimension by using focus stacking and stuff. But then when you look at the mushroom and you got the moss and you've got like levels of detail, I just feel like it really showcases it even more as far as like just how much detail is in it.
Yeah, I think without getting too sappy, and I have to sort of think about a proper way to frame this when I, you know, eventually have to write a statement about the work with the mushrooms and whatever that ends up morphing into, is that there's like a perfection in nature that's almost supernatural. You know, those shapes are, you know, whatever, if you believe it or not, but like designed by God or something bigger than us to make that mushroom designed that way with the gills, with the exact shape. So it pours the water inside of it, which feeds the earth, that feeds the mushroom. And like, I think that, you know, that is so much more intricate than anything humans can sort of synthetically manufacture. And I do think I had a feeling that was going to be the case visually when we look at stuff like that, you know, stuff that we're pulling out of nature. But I think that like taking those things and putting them into that sort of space age laboratory white environment, there's a lot you could stare at. And I think that technology really, really, really puts that forward. And my dream is to continue this and do hundreds of mushrooms that way. And maybe it's a book, maybe it's a show, maybe it's both. I don't know. I'm always kind of thinking about like what can I add to photography? Obviously the postmodern sort of understanding of the world where it's all been done is partially true, but what can I take and what elements can I combine to give myself something that I'm excited about that I hope people haven't seen before? It's a novel perspective on something. And I think, hopefully with that mushroom project, again, whatever that morphs into is one of those things where I'm taking something that everyone's aware of, but I'm showing it through photography and I'm adding value. I'm teaching myself and people through that visually. And if I can do that with that mushroom project, then it's a success. And there is an intimidating aspect to it too, because, you know, I'm like every other artist. I don't want to fail. And it's an experiment. And once it's out there, it's, you know, that's stuck to my brand and stuck to my legacy as an artist. And there's pressure associated with it too. Like I want to say it's fun, but I remember going up there with, you know, I had a team of friends that I pulled a bunch of favors that were going to come help me with it and stuff like that. And it was a bit of like a nerve-wracking few days because I didn't know what how it was going to turn out, you know? But I'm happy you like it, man.
It's gorgeous. Yeah, man. It's beautiful. Yeah. I can't wait to see more. Are you bird hunting and stuff up there too? I saw you were shooting skeet.
So yeah, like I do, I'm a novice hunter, but I do enjoy it. And there's there's what they call ruffed grouse, which
Sure.
is it's a, you know, the old guys up there call it partridge, and that's what everybody hunts for up there. In terms of like bird hunting, that's the bird. And then what I was this is a really insane thing that still goes on here in Ontario. At the southernmost tip of Ontario, it's basically off the coast of Ohio in Lake Erie. There's an island called Peely Island. It's the southernmost point, maybe in Canada, definitely in Ontario. It's like as far south as like Northern California. And they grow olives like in Canada on this island. It's way down there.
Yeah.
You take a ferry and it takes you down there. And it's a really small island, like 300 people. And they there's like a pheasant hunt that happens there once a year. And it's kind of like, you know, an old tradition. They release like thousands of these birds, and they release it to hunters that come in. It brings in a shitload of money for their economy. And I got invited to go with a couple of my friends who are way more experienced hunters than I am. And they have these crazy, these gun dogs, like the one's like a Bracco Italiano, one of them's like a wired-haired German pointer. Yeah. And you go and you hunt these birds with the dogs, and just watching the dogs run and how incredibly in tune they are with the hunt and stuff like that. It was a wild experience. It's another thing that sort of like, I'd like to maybe one day figure out how to show that off photographically too, because I think it's something that most people aren't even aware of at all. And so that's what the bird hunting stuff was.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, I mean, I hunt. I do a lot of elk and mule deer, but I usually hunt grouse every year. We have sage grouse out here, and it's usually maybe I'll get a grouse like while I'm looking for elk, you know, and they taste great, and they're gorgeous birds too, you know, like the feather patterns and stuff are really pretty.
Dude, I mean, without a dog, grouse hunting is like real tough. You know? Like it's the same thing. Like around my property, like I might shoot one or two a year if I'm like walking around with a shotgun and like one of them makes a mistake and walks out in front of me and flushes. But without a dog, it's so hard because they're fast, they're smart, they can fly like crazy. So yeah, I mean, I also do whitetail hunting in Ontario. So I just got back from a week of doing that.
Cool.
There's a hunt camp not far from my cabin that I got invited to. And then last year I got to go to Saskatchewan, which is where some of the biggest whitetail deer in the world are. Yeah. And I did a hunt out there. So it's not far from where the large whitetail ever was shot, it's called the Milo Hansen buck. And it's like maybe a couple 100 kilometers south of there is where I was hunting whitetail last year. So
amazing. Yeah, I know cool, I know the story of that buck for sure. And Saskatchewan. Yeah. That's Coulter Wall country, man, you know?
Yeah, it's cool. It's cool shit. And I didn't grow up. I mean, my dad, when he was real young, grew up hunting, but he never did it when I was, coming of age or anything like that. It's sort of something that I've developed an interest in, relatively recently. But it's cool. There's a lot to learn. It's like it's high pressure. And at times it's really relaxing, and at times it's like euphorically rewarding, obviously. So it's a pretty cool hobby. Yeah. I really enjoy it. Yeah.
Well, going to even what we were talking about, like being, the cabin space compared to life in Toronto. And it's come up on the show before because I've had a few hunting photographers on the show, and there's mixed emotions on it, and I get it. But when you're out hunting, it's hard to be much closer to nature than that. Like I'm an avid hiker, and I backpack, and I snowboard, and I do all kinds of mountain activities, but only when I'm hunting. There's really no other time that you're forced to be like, I'm just going to sit right here for the next 4 hours or so and watch nature unfold in front of me. And it just, I've seen so many amazing natural moments just happen right in front of me because I had camo on and I was hidden in the wood, like I was sitting in some trees. And it's such a cool meditative experience if you dial into it that way.
I've sort of grown, relatively unapologetic about it, like the way I hunt, I feel at peace with, and I really think that, like you said, it's put me in touch with nature so much more. I've never had, like, the adventures I've been on hunting are unparalleled, I think, by anything else that I've done. And I mean, I've been portaging, I've done camping and backpacking a lot. But the experiences I have, like you said, sitting in one spot for 3 hours, staring at a tree line, you know, and there's owls and you see raccoons do weird stuff that you didn't know they did. And, you know, it's never ending. And, and I love it. And I feel like I get it. It's not for everybody, but it's for sure for me. And I'm not going to stop doing it ever. And I sleep well at night, you know?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Me too. Not only do I sleep well at night, I eat well at night because I've got a freezer full of meat, you know? Like,
so that said, the only time I don't sleep well at night, if there's something out there that I still got to find in the morning. That,
right.
You know, and then I freak out. And, well, that's luckily only happened once. And then I found it the next morning, but I did not sleep well at night that night. But,
that's the worst.
I love it, man.
Yeah. When you said owl, that's a good transition. Like going from us talking about nature and the cabin, I do want to talk about the Porch Modern stuff because that's definitely kind of in my world, in my wheelhouse of what I do professionally. I mean, beautiful job, dude. Like such a cool project, you know, like when I saw even the video stuff you released where you kind of like released the bird. There were a couple personal projects that I was even pitching like a year ago that had a similar kind of idea of what you did. So honestly, my first impression was a little bit of jealousy because I was like, fuck, that's real close to what I wanted to do.
Oh man, I know that feeling so well, man. I get it.
But yeah, beautiful job. What a cool project.
Oh, dude, thank you, man. I'm so blessed because Colin, the guy who owns Porch Modern, I mean, I'm sure you're the same as me, but I'm a real geek for that stuff. Like I love furniture design. You know, I love all that stuff. And you know, a half a mile down the road from me here, there is what's probably one of the best modern furniture showrooms, maybe in North America. Like he's selling pieces to celebrities and people around the world. And he's like, I hate the term, but in terms of like being a picker, he might be the best like furniture picker in the world. You know, his showroom is like effectively like a museum of the best of modern furniture. And he's got stuff in there that's priceless. And he, you know, collaborated with me and asked me if I'd be willing to help him, you know, photograph some of this stuff. And through our brainstorming, I was like, you know, what if we incorporated like some owls or something like that? And he's like, dude, I love owls. And that's how it started.
Who doesn't?
And so the guy who came, that's like the bird wrangler, he's got a bunch of different stuff and he happened to have that hunting dog with him. So we used that for the shot of the chairs. That's how that idea developed. And I think that you could probably appreciate this. What's amazing about working with Colin at Porch Modern is, unlike a lot of other professional projects where the art director can get in the way of the creative, and there's a client, there's all these sort of like mixed emotions and mixed desires about what this end project has to look like. And I've had these frustrating moments where I'm shooting beautiful furniture or you know, but it's client based and their input sort of gets in the way of the way I want to take it for whatever reason. Maybe the reason is that they need a specific thing and my creative vision doesn't help it. With Colin, it was like the first time where it's like free reign. We're like on the exact same wavelength. He's open to my ideas. I'm open to his ideas. And that's how that sort of came about. And that's not over, by the way. Like that's just something that's going in the background. We want to shoot more of that stuff. And whether if it's using animals again, or maybe, you know, propping it creatively with other stuff, I'm not sure, plants or something, but yeah, it's I'm super lucky that all worked out.
Oh, dude. Yeah. I mean, such a cool project. Like you said, and you were right. Like I'm a huge fan of furniture design, you know, mid-century modern stuff, you know, like it's the world I work in. And so even though, like I was just saying, we both spend a lot of time in nature and I pull massive amounts of creative inspiration out of nature, you know, when I see like we were talking about with the Alpa cameras, you know, when I see someone creating just beautifully designed furniture like that, it's so cool. And then, you know, to try to come up with the way to showcase it that feels original and, you know, just kind of brings a different feel about it. It was just, like I said, I really liked it when I started seeing it. The owl was amazing. That whole little vignette with the owl was really cool. But so was when you said it was like a Weinerheimer, I think. But like, yeah, with the dog and the chairs leaning towards it, and the fact that you had the dog like looking up towards it, it's super cool. Like, talk a little bit about it. Like, I guess like pitching those ideas and, you know, like bringing it together, like from kind of pitch to final product, you know, like what did that really look like?
Well, it's just something I wanted to see. And I have these ideas in my head about stuff I want to see. I want to see an ice cream truck on a white background. I haven't been able to figure that one out yet because of the logistics. I want to see a bunch of wrecked cars from demolition derbies plopped on a white cove, perfectly photographed. Like, I want to see that. I haven't figured out how to make that happen, but that's something I want to see. And I wanted to see exotic animals or rare birds, you know, used as props in a furniture shoot. That's just something I've always wanted to see.
Yeah.
And it actually happened and it worked out. And it's one of those instances where like I knew it was going to be good, and it was good. It wasn't that hard to execute, and it just felt great, and the client was happy. And I just think it was a really smooth collaboration. Like I really think Colin and I were on a very similar wavelength. He needed to do something to kind of that pops and that looks exciting for people having to do with his brand. And I wanted to have full creative control on a furniture shoot.
Yeah.
And it was like this amazing moment where it just came together and it like really looked as good as I was hoping. This is the other thing too. It's like, sometimes you just got to do it. Like it wasn't like there was some crazy difficult thing. Like we literally just like spent a few $1,000 or maybe even less, hired a guy to come with the birds, got a couple trucks, got the space rented and like
did it,
and a couple assistants and just did it. And it's like, and now it's done. And like, now we want to shoot more. And, so I guess I'm almost giving myself a pep talk right now about like,
yeah, doing it again.
Those other ideas,
yeah.
You know, and it was smooth. It wasn't tough, to convince Colin. And I think he was excited about it. And I think that he's also, you know, I'm lucky to be working with him. And I think that like, through that process, like there's tremendous amount of trust that's developed now. And I mean, I'm sure I'll come up with an idea down the road. And I think that like, there's no more convincing now. He's just like, yeah, let's do it. Those creative projects I think are so important, man. And like, and I'll just be completely transparent about it. Like there was no money in that. In fact, I'm probably out of pocket a few $100 or maybe even a little bit more just to make that happen. Like that was just purely like a creative shoot, you know, and like there's the client, the benefit is that the client has like some of the most beautiful furniture in the world. And the benefit for me is that I get some of the greatest portfolio pieces. Yeah. I hope photography of furniture that I can envision like that. And that was the trade. And I think, you know, doing that kind of work is, going back to the start of our conversation, that's what drives the less creative work, the commercial work, is that people know that you're capable of that.
No, I mean, I appreciate the full disclosure because that's great to hear. I mean, it's always so important for people to hear. It's important for me to hear because sometimes you see those projects and you're like, man, like, why won't somebody hire me to do that? You know? And you're like, maybe they didn't. Maybe that might have been all his undertaking. And so to hear like it kind of is, you know, you're like, yeah, then that's how you do it. But then to be able to take that and look, there's no shortage of extremely high-end furniture makers out there, you know, like the world I work in, you know, there's chairs out there that cost what a lot of people's cars cost. And so, to be able to pitch other people and be like, look what I did for this guy is that's where it's at. And that's where it's the discipline of like you said, like, I've got this idea. So like, it's not that hard. Like, let's just do it. And if it costs me some money, you're fortunate enough to stay busy enough to pay for it. And so like, put like you're gambling on yourself.
I know. And that's a big one this year too. Like I gotta self-invest, and I talk to a lot of guys I look up to, and they invest tens of thousands of dollars in their own personal work. And, now I used to invest hundreds and now I invest thousands. And like, that's just how stuff gets done,
Yeah.
And my very, very early work was like, we talked about this last time, but pre-drone, like photographing highways from small planes. And like, like that wasn't free. And that ended up bringing me a lot of positive stuff, but I had to invest in. Yeah, I mean, it's just how a lot of stuff gets done, and it's tricky when you're starting out. And obviously, I'm fortunate that I'm like relatively comfortable and I can do that. But I mean, I think that for people that are listening to this maybe and they're just starting out, like it's okay to spend a few $100 to make something, to realize a creative vision. It's totally okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or even to, there's a lot of mantra of like, we shouldn't be doing things for free as artists because we're setting this bar of other people expecting it, except in cases like that, like, except when you need to do it. And it's a
I know.
positive trade-off for both parties involved. And you're like, look, no one is willing to hire me for this idea. And so to be able to put this idea in the marketplace, I need to not only do it for free, I'm going to lose money on it, but like with the idea that I'm going to gain money in the long run.
In the long run, for sure. And I know what you're saying. And I understand that like there is a lot of exploitive stuff. I'm watching, one of my assistants right now kind of starting to get traction and start getting his own projects, and he's like, fuck, they want me to do this for like $500. And then I'm like, it's one thing if it's just a job. If it's a portfolio piece, then do it.
Yeah.
Within reason. Like,
Yes.
I don't want anybody to go out there and think that they have to work for free and get exploited. But I think that like, treating a $500 job like it's a $5,000 job, if you're going to get a bunch of work that you're proud of, that's going to live in your portfolio for the next decade, like you kind of have to do that calculus.
Yeah.
Yourself, but I think that there's a lot of instances where if you take a creative idea and push it forward and create a portfolio piece out of it, it's worth it to do it for free or low money or no money, or you're paying a few $100 or $1,000 out of pocket to make it happen. I think it's okay. But yeah, I do think that, there's a lot of people that are gross and they think because photography is fun, and there's a lot of people that do it that they can, go get a campaign shot for their new shoe company for nothing. But and you got to be careful for that, of course, but it's not always the case that if you're working for free, you're chipping a bit of your own money and getting something amazing out of it. I think that's all right. I think that can be all right.
Of course. No, I think that's a good distinction. It's like, what's in it for you, and if it's just somebody lowballing you to try to exploit a cheap product because you're inexperienced and they know you need the money, like that's gross, But even then, like if you think, I don't know, this subject matter could really do me, like I'll definitely never work for that client again. I think that's what you need to tell yourself, like then shut it off, like shut the spigot off immediately. Cause I think what I see sometimes is the inexperienced photographer says yes to it, and then they continue to say yes to it, and you're like, hey, start saying no, like or raise the rate immediately. You gotta be like, that was a one-time thing, man.
Well, you learn too, you could sort of sniff out the more experienced you are what might be worth it, and what, like, put it this way, like if somebody called me up and say, hey, we're a magazine, we're a startup, we have no money, but we got this crazy opportunity, and Scarlett Johansson's agreed to be in a editorial for our magazine. We thought you'd be great to shoot it. We don't really have any money. We're shooting it in Miami. Like, we could maybe pay for your airfare. Would you be down to go do it? I'd be like, of course.
Yeah,
like,
I'm there.
I'll probably be at I'll be at a couple grand, but I'll have these amazing portraits of this beautiful celebrity.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Like, that's one of those ones where, like, of course, I'll do it for no money or come out of pocket. But if somebody's like, hey, I need some corporate headshots, I don't have any money, would you be willing to help me out? Like, unless they're a friend, obviously I'm not going to do that, because I know that I'm not getting anything out of it, and it's just a headache, So those are obviously two extremes, but I think that sometimes you got to sort of do that math in your head and say, hey, like, is this something that I could benefit from if I actually do this job, and I'm not going to get to make a ton of money from it. So
yeah, no, look, so much of your career, I think it seems like it revolves around trying to find this balance of like art and commerce, and like how do you support yourself? How do you make enough money to then be able to also create art? And then hopefully the art makes money too. And I just like, man, I had the opportunity to have Ethan Hawke on the show. It was cool. And
I saw that. Yeah.
And he talked about that, because he's directing independent films that are definitely they're not there to make a bunch of money, and he talked about like that ability to go, look, sometimes you just got to be a craftsman and you got to make money and you got to put food on the table. And other times you got to do something for your soul. And it's like, how do you balance the two,
Yeah. For me, the God honest truth is like, I've got this ton of work that I get shooting really corporate stuff, and I'm pretty good at it. I feel like I kind of make it look easy because I've had so much experience doing it. But is it like my favorite thing to shoot? Like if I won the lottery tomorrow, would I be going up and lugging my equipment up in elevators and skyscrapers to take portraits of guys in suits? Probably not. But yeah. I'm still at a point where like I've got mortgages, I've got, I got my truck, I've got equipment, I've got, like just life. I got to put food on the table, and like, I'm not at a point yet where I'm like fuck all that. Like I'm still fortunate that like I can do that kind of work, which isn't tremendously intellectually stimulating or really creative, but I know I'm good at it and it's not that bad. But it's a job, sometimes it still feels like a job, and I'm still taking that work, and I think that's my that's my security blanket. Like that I know that I could go and do that stuff, and it'll support me, and I can take that money and go and, shoot beautiful furniture with owls on them or whatever.
Yeah, totally. I mean, once again, man, I appreciate the honesty, because that's just how it works. Like I still say yes to stuff from like, ugh. Like I definitely feel fortunate that I get to work on a lot of paid work that pays me pretty well, that I enjoy. Like I enjoy architecture, but even in that space, I'd say yes to plenty that it's strictly for the paycheck, like it's not really scratching any kind of creative itch for me. But the difference is, I think it keeps me sharp, like I think just like it probably does for you. Like if you're doing corporate stuff, it's still sharpening the knife when it's time to pull the knife out and work on something you actually want to work on, so I think it's all beneficial, but it just, it's the trade-off. I'd much rather say yes to something in the creative space that maybe doesn't do it for me than say yes to some desk job so I can continue to pay for all the things I want to do. So like,
oh dude, like we're lucky, man.
Yeah.
Like obviously, I know. Like I think about what most people's mornings are like for like 30 years, getting up and like shaving and like getting on a bus or sitting in traffic for an hour to get to some tower to go work in front of a computer. Like, yeah, like I know that I'm blessed, and we're both really lucky that I'm in control of my own adventure here. I don't have a boss, and if I have to do some corporate headshots every couple weeks to make it all okay, I'm still okay with that. We talked about, I don't want to repeat what we talked about last time I was on, but like, the weddings were one of those things for me that I was finally able to convince myself like, hey, it's okay. I was probably in my like mid 30s by the time I was like, it's time to like let that part of the business die. Right. And you're not going to go bankrupt if you're not using every weekend of the summer shooting weddings. It's not, your heart's not in it anymore. It was great for almost 10 years, but now you've graduated. No more weddings, and maybe one day I'll be like, you graduated.
Yeah. No more corporate headshots. Yeah. Yeah. Look, I mean, you got to hold on to the security blanket as long, we did talk about it, but it doesn't matter because that topic never gets antiquated because we all deal with it, like you get, if you're lucky enough to like book dream projects that also pay well, you're just like, oh, I've made it, like I was just going to do this forever. And then you get slapped in the face by reality sometimes. And you're like, okay, I haven't gotten another one of those calls. I need some other stuff. And so I learned pretty early on, as I'm sure you did, to just, like I keep it real with everyone, like I'm a nice guy in general. And just cause I prefer to live life that way. But even for clients that I don't necessarily want to work with, I still keep in contact with them. I keep open dialogue with them because I really have tried not to shut the door on much. But just like you were saying with the weddings, there have been certain kind of mile markers in my career where I've thought, okay, I think I'm gonna gently let go of that security blanket. I'm not gonna be mean to them.
Yeah.
Just it's gonna be real hard for me to find the time for them anymore, and they quit calling you. You know, like
I was gonna say, isn't it funny how sometimes when you try to drop a client or a certain type of work, and then once you start saying no, that's when they come back so thirsty and they're like, please,
yeah,
what else can we do?
Yeah.
Like, can we pay you more? Can you want to do it in your own time? It's like, sometimes I find when I try to cut something off, that's when they come back. So, and it's like, it can be harder to shed or harder to shake than you think sometimes, but I don't know. I hear you. I'm in a very fortunate position, and I try not to whine too much that like once in a while I gotta shoot some headshots or do some job.
I don't think it sounds like whining. I think it's once again, especially for my younger listeners, I think it's very important because outward facing, when you look at your body of work and your social media profile and all that, you don't see that. And so, sometimes I think, and I don't, just to be clear, like I don't blame you for not seeing that, obviously. But I think sometimes that gives the illusion to a lot of people kind of chasing their own dreams that like I just want to do this. I'm only going to say yes to this. And look, maybe you will get lucky enough to do just that. But I think in reality, you got to feed yourself along the way. And so, I love the honesty. And I think it doesn't sound like whining. It's just trying to tell people like, look, even though you see me selling 6-foot prints to collectors, I'm also saying yes to corporate headshots. That's important to hear.
I am, for sure. And I have a very kind of blue collar attitude about it. You know what I mean? I think that you see a lot of like the cliche of like the struggling artist or the starving artist. And like, I knew very early on, like, I don't want to be that, like I'll do work that's not my exact favorite thing to do in order to have a comfortable lifestyle. And of course, if I was like, I'm only going to shoot high resolution photographs of mushrooms and coins and dollar bills, like at this stage, I could probably make a decent living doing just that still. But early on, like you could do that, but then I'm going to be like, living with roommates when I'm 50, and I don't want to do that. I want to have nice things just like everybody else. I want to have a comfortable life. And in order to do that, like, I'm going to have to shoot weddings, shoot corporate headshots, basically shoot anything if the price is right for most of my life, and finally have the luxury now when I'm a little bit older to say no to some stuff. But like, I think that it's a job too, man. And I think that I'm a craftsman, and I hopefully can be pretty good at shooting just about anything because I've had to teach myself so many different aspects of photography, whether it's like tabletop product photography or headshots or portraits or landscapes or interiors or whatever. Like, I think I'm able to do a lot of those things because I've had to, because I've gotten hired to do that. And I'm like, I'm going to make this work. I'm going to make this good, even though it's not exactly what I want to be shooting.
Totally. And like I said, I think it keeps the knife sharp. And I love like when I see like going back to the Porch Modern project, for me, that's like such a great example of you kind of taking this talent of like, everyday objects into fine art and applying that to like, what would that look like in a commercial type setting? And it comes across beautifully because then you suddenly have like these pieces that could be in a catalog for a furniture maker, but could also hang on the wall. And I think, like so much of your fine art career has kind of been on that fine line between the two. It's like you're taking these everyday objects and creating art out of them. And then it's like, what if I took a commercial object and made art out of it? And I love that concept.
I appreciate it very much. And I mean, I think that's a very astute understanding of what I'm actually interested in. I think that's exactly right. And that's what I wanted to accomplish when I, back in the early 2000s when I set out to do this thing, is I want to have a capability, a strong capability and know-how as a commercial photographer. I want to have those tools and then apply them to fine art stuff and not make my photographs look in a cliche artistic way, but have that precision, that excellence that you learn through, shooting beer bottles in a commercial setting or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. I love it. I love it, dude. Well, like I said, when the first time you were on, man, I'm a fan. I love when I see you post stuff, and I look forward to seeing what comes out of the cabin, what comes out of your continued personal project you got going on with the food stylist like that. It's cool, man. It's cool to see it come out.
Well, thank you. And like the weird one now, which has kind of come out of nowhere and I never expected, is that like, I'm a hat salesman too, which is like,
yeah.
If you told me this 5 years ago, you're going to be, selling hats on Instagram, I would have been like, I don't know what the hell you're talking about. That's ridiculous. But I mean, that's like a whole new thing that sort of opened up. I don't know. I'm just going with it, and we'll see where it goes and we'll see what it turns into. But it's like, it's a completely foreign thing now. And then that's sort of become a huge part of what I'm doing. And it's exciting, but it's also pretty weird. I don't know where it came from.
It's a cool design. I like it, man.
Thanks. It just came from, hey man, where'd you get that hat? And then eventually, my girlfriend was like, that's like the third person that's asked you that. Maybe you should start selling them.
Uh-huh.
And Peter really liked them too. I gave him a couple and he was wearing them in his episodes and stuff. And I was like, all right, let's do it. Let's try.
Yeah, let's try.
I put one of them out back in, I don't know, like August or July or something. And then they sold out immediately. And I'm like, okay, maybe there's something to this. We got to take this a little more seriously. So yeah, it's been pretty fun working on that too. And just kind of like, it's just resurrecting stuff that's sort of been forgotten, sort of like my photography too, like old logos and stuff, and basically making the merch that I wish existed that doesn't, and making it for myself, and people seem to really resonate with it. So it's been pretty cool.
It's something I'm also trying to get better at myself. I've always been trying, but like recently I've really, and I've probably talked about it too many times on a bunch of episodes that are in the can that will come out soon, of just like saying yes to things, like saying yes to a lot of personal projects, saying yes to things that are not necessarily what I do, that would have been easier to be like, I don't know if I really have time to do this. I'm a pretty busy guy. And instead just being like, yeah, fuck it. Like let's try it, And so to hear that about like, that's kind of the evolution of the hats. That's what happens sometimes. It's like, are you willing to just go, yeah, why not? Let's give it a shot. Let's throw something at the wall here. It might stick.
It's cool. I think it's fun, man. Like it's probably not the last thing I'm going to try that I know nothing about. And I think I'll be, again, full disclosure. I'm as excited about that as about anything else I'm doing, and it kind of came out of nowhere. I stumbled on it, and it's great.
Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I'll send you some.
Yeah, please. Yeah. I'm going to send you stuff too. I don't know if my merch is as cool as yours, but yeah, let's do a merch trade.
It looked pretty cool.
Cool. Peter, thanks for taking time, man. It's cool to catch up.
Dude, I love talking to you, man. Honestly, anytime. Yeah. I said this last time too, but come to Toronto, we'll have a drink together.
It might happen eventually. It's been a long time. I think I was like 18 years old the last time I was in Toronto, so I need to make it happen again.
Revolution.
All right, there it was. What'd you think? Great catching up with that guy. Like I said, I'm a fan of what he's doing. It's beautiful. And Alpa, if you hear this and you want to see what architecture would look like if I'm using one of those cameras, feel free to get one to Colorado to me. I'll talk about it on this podcast all you want. Anyway, thanks, Peter. If you hear this, always great chatting. Look forward to having you back on some point. And that's where I'm going to leave it. Once again, visualrevolutionary.com, at Visual Revolutionary on all the socials and on YouTube. Hit subscribe there. I'll be back soon for another episode. Until then, I'm out. Peace.
Revolution.